Great. On to our next meetings, joint meetings of the New York State Housing Finance Agency, State of New York Mortgage Agency, Affordable Housing Corporation, State of New York Municipal Bond Bank Agency, Tobacco Settlement Financing Corporation, State of New York Mortgage Agency, Mortgage Insurance Committee, and the New York State Housing Finance Agency Finance and Program Committee for Thursday, April 11th, 2019. Welcome. Good morning, everybody, one more time. Let's turn things over to Linda, who can begin the proceedings of these meetings.
I'll note that Jesse Alzak, representing the Director of the Division of Budget, and Linda Baldwin, representing the Secretary of State, are participating in the meeting via video conference from the New York State Division of Budget Conference Center at the Capitol Building, room 131 in Albany. Good morning. And then Andrew Sanfilippo, representing the State Controller, is participating from the agency's Buffalo Regional Office at the Electric Tower, 535 Washington Street, Suite 105. Good morning, Andy.
Good morning.
I'll ask for motions and seconds to call to order the April 11, 2019 meetings of the New York State Housing Finance Agency, the New York State Affordable Housing Corporation, the State of New York Mortgage Agency, the State of New York Municipal Bond Bank Agency, the Tobacco Settlement Financing Corporation, the State of New York Mortgage Agency, the Mortgage Insurance Committee, and the HFA Finance and Program Committee. May I please have a motion for HFA and AHC?
So moved.
Second.
Thank you. A motion, please, for SONYMA?
So moved.
And a second?
Second.
Motion, please, for MBBA and TSFC?
So moved.
Thank you. And
Second.
Second.
Thank you. Motion, please, for the Mortgage Insurance Committee?
So moved.
And a second?
Second.
Thank you. And a motion, please, for the HFA Finance and Program Committee?
So moved.
And a second?
Second.
As items are presented to each board throughout today's meeting, motions and seconds will be used unless specific items call for a different vote or unless any board member wishes to record his or her vote differently.
Let's turn things over to Ruth Ann for her monthly report.
Thank you, Ken, and good morning, everybody. This morning, the HFA and SONYMA boards and their committees will consider financing and insurance for projects representing 3,384 units. 3,000 units of affordable housing located in Brooklyn, Bronx, New York, Orange, and Monroe counties. At AHC, we will report on new awards of over $1.9 million for 75 units of affordable housing this month, all awarded in counties outside of New York City. Also being presented will be various consent, informational, and administrative items for the board's consideration, and a few fun things that we have done since last month. Early in March, we went down to D.C. to go to the annual conference of state HFAs. While we were there attending the conference, we spent a day meeting with the state congressional delegation, including Senator Schumer, and on the House side with Nita Lowey, Tom Suozzi, Joe Morrell, Max Rose, Anthony Brindisi, and Nydia Velasquez's staff, by and large, not necessarily the members, to talk about our federal agenda, to talk about the activities that we have in their district, to talk about how important the bond programs, CDBG, home, weatherization, Section 8, how important those things are to us, how important those things should be to them, to make sure that as we go through the annual appropriations and just sort of general process that people understand how the things that they are working on and voting on are actually play out in their relative districts. So that was a very long but good day. In the middle of March, our very own James McIntyre did a brown bag with the whole staff around Affordable Housing Bonds 101. That was our first sort of brown bag on sort of technical topics, and I think it was very highly attended, very well received, and we look forward to doing more and more of those. On the events side, last week we went out to Woodhull Hospital and celebrated the opening of a supportive housing building that is an infill new construction on an underutilized parking lot of Woodhull Hospital, which is sort of an example of our sort of future state as we enter into our Vital Brooklyn, as we sort of move along in our Vital Brooklyn efforts. We'll sort of be doing much of the same and really trying to push the envelope on health and housing in Brooklyn. I also attended a meeting with a couple of staff with the Peter Cooper Stuyvesant Town Tenant Association. As people I'm sure are fairly familiar with that building in the complex, it is very large, and it has we sort of engage with it in our Office of Rent Administration. The issues that they sort of face are more complex in a sort of singular building. So we had a good meeting with State Senator Hoylman, State's Assemblyman Harvey Epstein, and the council members sort of to talk through, how we sort of deal with large, complex buildings in the city of New York, which was great. And then just this week on Monday, we went to the opening of I think it's Augustine, although you want to say Augustine. I do anyway. Terrace in the Bronx, which is which was a nice event attended by Cardinal Dolan, as well as First Lady Shirlane McRae. That is the Catholic Church's effort to look at underutilized parishes around the city and to be able to work with themselves as a development entity and partners to do affordable and supportive housing on those underutilized sites. And we were thrilled to be part of that. It's an incredibly beautiful building up in the Bronx. As always, my counterpart Lenny Skrill is upstate in Geneseo, in Cheektowaga, in Buffalo, in Rochester, doing lots of great ribbon cuttings and groundbreakings. 'Tis the season, so for the next couple of months there will be lots of traveling around the state, celebrating all the good work that we've been doing. So with that, I will turn it back to you.
All right. Any questions for Ruth Ann on her busy agenda and great report? My guess is unavoidable, Ruth Ann, but when you go to Washington and you meet with the state's congressional delegation, that the members from New York really want to ask you all about NYCHA. Even though it's not really fair.
Discussion about
it's not fair, but if you're Congresswoman Velasquez, for obvious reasons, what's on your mind when you think about?
Yes, there's a lot of NYCHA talk.
Congratulations, retroactively, for what no doubt was a lot of diplomacy on your part to handle those tough issues. All right, so let's move ahead. Linda's going to help us out with committee actions this morning.
Sure. So the report of the audit committee. The committee took all five committees met early this morning and took the following action. All five committees adopted minutes. All five committees adopted a resolution approving the internal audit work plan for fiscal year 2020. All five committees adopted a resolution recommending the acceptance of the yearly audit committee self-evaluation. All five committees adopted a resolution approving internal audits, follow-up audits of the 2017 audit reports. The MBBA committee adopted a resolution approving an MBBA program audit. The SONYMA committee adopted a resolution approving a servicer audit. All five committees reviewed the financial statement first quarter fiscal 2019 and third quarter fiscal 2018 for AHC. Then we have the governance committee meetings. All the committees took the following actions earlier today. All five committees adopted minutes. All five committees adopted a resolution recommending the acceptance of the government committee's self-evaluation. All five committees reviewed and approved the facilities-related purchase orders and contracts. The HFA and SONYMA committees reviewed IT contracts. The HFA committee approved purchase orders with the New York Times and reviewed online legal research provider contracts, and the HFA and SONYMA committees reviewed the Buffalo leases and an MOA with the Natural Heritage Trust.
We're now going to present items shared by HFA, AHC, SONYMA, MBBA, and TSFC. Linda is going to record the approval of the minutes. Linda?
So the minutes of the meetings of the HFA, AHC, SONYMA, and the Mortgage Insurance Committee held on March 7, 2019, and those of the MBBA and TSFC boards held on January 24, 2019 shall be deemed approved, absent corrections from members and directors.
Thank you. Linda's now going to take, well, actually, she's not.
No.
Never mind. We're not doing that. We're skipping ahead. I like that part, skipping ahead. Item 2, resolution approving the BAM budget, compensation for IT consultants, and a contract with Carasoft. Carasoft, is that what it is? For support and maintenance of SAP licenses to be presented by Betsy. Good morning, Betsy.
Good morning. Except I'm going to bring a crew.
Protection.
Ken. Here comes Ken with the laptop.
So much better with numbers.
Oh, my.
Oh, wait, maybe we need one more.
It's a congressional panel.
When they line up the CEOs.
Yes. White guys.
So, good morning. It's our monthly conversation about BAM. This is Mark Franzoni, newly joined as our Director of Strategy and Operations Change Management, serving in the role as the Business Project Manager.
Pardon me. Sorry. Mark? Mark, so is Mark the person you told us about last month?
Mark
that
is, and now
you
he's
couldn't
in the
you
flesh.
couldn't confirm in our board meeting whether he would say yes to the job or no?
Analyzed us.
So either he's faking it and hasn't said yes yet, and he's really a good friend, or he said yes. So if you said yes, thank you, Mark. We need you. Welcome.
And obviously you know Ken and our colleagues from Gardner. So quickly I want to give you an update on where we are on BAM, and then As was said, we have 3 action items for the board. So an update on how we're doing. The project governance is strong. The business has been more engaged. Mark has hit the ground running to ensure that the voice of the business is represented in decision-making and to ensure that ultimately the product that we get at the end is going to be responsive to the business needs. I am continually more engaged in negotiations, weekly meetings with all the vendors, regular project management team report outs. I could bore you with the list of things that we talk about all of the time. Not boring. I'm sorry, I could excite you. 95% of the SAP part of the system is built. There's a little bit more remaining that should be done by the end of April. And then we go into continuing to load data into the system, testing it, and what is likely to be what is called defect management. So as things come up that are wrong in the system, obviously there will be more work to iron out the kinks. One note is that is in this project potentially going to be higher than in other standard SAP implementations given the transition that we had from our prior vendor. ProLink, the sort of front end of the system, if you will, has been re-engaged. They provided demos to the business that were well received. In full transparency, we still have a period in the next number of weeks to get the same level of confidence with ProLink that we have with SAP in terms of their ability to deliver by November. But we are working very hard on that. It's a very different type of system. It's an out-of-the-box type of system with a little bit of customization. So I have every reason to believe that I have every reason to be confident. We had a very successful what is called we had a very successful experience with the first phase of loading data into the system, and we have a number of those tests happening in the next number of weeks. So we're preparing for that. Initial user training has begun, and what you've been waiting for, we also have had success with bringing the budget down. So we've brought the budget down since last month's meeting by $3 million. 2.4 of that represents reductions for SAP services, both for the implementation and for the 2 years afterwards, which we've always talked about as the maintenance costs. And 600,000 of it is our savings that we've identified internally with the dependence on consultants for the term of this project, right? So we're going to try and train more of our current IT staff to do some of the things that in the budget we had projected the need for consultants. Does that make sense? Okay. Any questions on that before I go to the 3 action items? Or any questions for?
I have just a general question for you. You referred briefly when you started to the.
Are you okay? You okay?
Sure.
I'll just bring another one over.
Sorry about that.
You all right, Chris?
No worries.
Yeah, I'm good.
All right.
I was leaning too far to the right.
It's so exciting. I
Is
know
that?
you
It's not a
really
political.
find
It's not a political statement.
I may have been falling asleep, Betsy.
It's not
I'm
a.
not falling asleep. I can assure you, it's not falling
There
asleep.
actually is also.
Yeah, it looks like it's.
Yeah.
Huh.
I think we just have.
Okay.
Maybe all versions.
Luckily, we will be renovating the space.
Exactly. Come November, all new chairs.
Okay.
Sorry, Chairman.
It is not the first time a BAM discussion has knocked us out of our seats.
All right.
I'm back.
It was so exciting.
Sorry about that.
No, I wanted to go back to something real quick, Betsy, which is that, and our friends from Gardner may help with this as well. It's this question of the governance structure,
Yes.
under which you're moving forward with the work and driving towards that magical day. Your superstitious chairman said no to Halloween, but we said yes to November 1, right? Mm-hmm. So How is that governance structure? Because that chart at our last meeting that you all laid out, I think, gave us, if I can speak for the group, a degree of confidence that you had a plan moving forward around really the governance, the oversight, your role as quarterback, the leadership of the project. But there was an empty box. Mark's name was kind of like very, very faded, like light-face type. How is that working? Are you sticking to it? Is this governance structure that you laid out for us, are you with it? Is it working?
I will answer, and everyone else should answer as well. Yes. So Mark's name is now no longer not there. It's obviously quite there. The team has consistently had, from a sort of project management standpoint, very regular meetings, right? And has been working his tail off with the rest of the team. As was pointed out in the Gartner report, it was the project management was largely on the shoulders of our IT staff team. We have also had, consistent throughout the whole project, monthly steering committee meetings where the business is represented, the IT side. In the last 3 weeks, we have weekly, if not bi-weekly, conversations that include the three of us, plus the rest of the PMO team, plus Gary has participated in them as sort of the voice of the business. So, yes, I think that this will ebb and flow as we continue down the project, but I would say that there is clearly increasing accountability for what is going to be delivered.
And I would agree. I think the flow of information has been better. Mark has definitely been a good addition, a very good addition to the group. I think people know that Mark has worked here before, so he knows the business well, and he's focused, 100%, 100%, right?
Right now.
120% or 150% on this project. So. And we've worked together before when he was at the agency. So it's been very helpful for him to be the point person, with the business, ensuring that processes, end to end, are working as they should work. There's a lot to do still to control that, but it's definitely been a good addition.
Thanks, Ken. You can't tell, but I'm looking over your shoulders to our Gardner friends.
That's you.
Can you guys cite, just quickly, evidence, you made this really clear and very helpful observation that end users, customers, weren't fully or, completely engaged earlier on, right? So one of the solutions of the governance structure has been to use Mark and more fully engage the actual customers. Can you guys from Gartner just give us a little, what's your view of how that's working? And are we doing better at engaging end users in the development of the system?
Can I just answer one quick thing before
Please.
that in full disclosure, right? Right now, we don't have, though we're going to come back and talk to you about that probably at the next meeting, we don't have a formal relationship with Gartner.
That's why they're being so quiet.
Well, no, and they're welcome. But so they have been very helpful to me in particular, to us, as we've gotten all the things done that I just said between last month and this month. They haven't been on the ground.
Okay.
So you may be able to answer that question, but
Fair.
But may not. I don't
Important.
know.
So Christy and I, we have been to a number of meetings, and so I think we see a positive shift from trying to figure out what to do with the project to what's happening with the project and moving forward to get to the goal. And so it's the substantive work that needs to be tackled between now and November in order to go live. And so there's clear focus on that and a clear sight line around how to do that, and then tackling the day-to-day issues with the business in terms of, is all the critical functionality included in the overall code drafts, et cetera, and making sure that's there. And if there's something that there's a gap or possibly putting that as an enhancement moving forward. Right. But I think we see that shift from trying to figure out what we should do to doing it.
Right. It's great.
And just so
Great.
the
Thank
board
you.
knows, we've been in conversations about Gartner's continued participation in the project. One iteration of that conversation, a recent one, which we're not ready to present yet, but is participation in these weekly sort of what we call go to green meetings or really project status meetings where and continued support for the executive sponsorship of this project. So I'm hopeful that there will be that Gartner will continue to have perspective on that and be able to answer that more fully as we get to the end.
Okay. Thank you.
Other questions from
Other
anyone?
questions from, yeah.
Yes.
Thanks. I'm going to ask a question I just couldn't anticipate asking previously. I'm very happy to hear the news, but could you just explain the budget reduction again for me?
Yes.
And how we were able to do it?
Yes. So the budget reduction is $2.4 million for SAP services and $600,000 that we looked at in our assumptions about the need for supplementing our IT structure with consultants. Let's talk about the 2.4 for a second, and then we can talk about the 600. Okay, the 2.4 is is a portion for $1.7 million of reductions for the implementation services. So that's now until November, the end of November. It's a month. The go live is the beginning of November, but 1 month of extra support, which we've just lumped into that, and $700,000 approximately for the post go live support costs. We've always shown you a budget that shows you start until flipping the switch, and then 2 years of maintenance and support. So the bulk of it is the implementation costs, and we have gone back with the support of with a big team, not just me, and asked for a sharpening of pencils. And we went with the principle of we have to sharpen pencils without shifting risk or cost to the agency. And this was after many back and forths where we were able to land.
I have some general questions, Sharon.
Yes.
Not having the benefit of any of the background information I think that a lot of you are dealing with or have seen. The first I heard about this was 2 days ago when I got an email from Alex showing me the resolution as well as the transmittal letter outlining why we got to raise the contract amounts and so forth. So I just, in the short period of time they had to look at this, I wanted to put together a list of questions that maybe could help clarify for me, just essentially what's going on with this BAM project. And I'm a little curious as to, how did we get into this mess in the first place? Initially, do we pick the wrong vendors? Did we, should someone be held accountable for the fact that, we're constantly, or you are constantly coming to the board and asking for, increases to the budget? And the other thing is, or more, was, what was the basis of the justification that determined that we got to continue increasing these contracts? And, and I don't know how much we've spent to date. I don't know when the Gartner report that is referred to in this communication was put out. Why did other board members? I didn't get a copy of the Gartner report, so I don't know what's in it. I don't know what the deliverables are. I don't know how much we've spent to date on the project, and are we over budget or under budget? When do we? I heard that you were planning on going live in November, so I just want to know what the total cost of the project is going to end up being as it relates to what the initial budget called for. So, anyways, those were. I hate to be the thorn in the side of certain people, but I just, like I said, I didn't realize that this was an agenda item until I got a copy from Alex of the email. So, so I got some concerns. And I know you just said that we saved $3 million on several different items. Does that mean we can reduce one of the requests by $3 million? And we've been going month to month, for $3,500,000 a month without no one's explained to me what are we getting for that money. Is the governor's office aware about how we're over budget? Like I said, I apologize. I don't have the benefit of a lot of the, like I said, you guys approved these things at meetings that occurred on March 7th. I don't find out about that we're even doing this until 2 days ago, April 9th. So again, I apologize for being kind of a fly in the ointment here, but I'm just trying to, try to reconcile, my role as a board member as to not dealing with all, with all the information and having some of the, having the benefit of knowing, perhaps someone give me some background as to why we're doing all this.
Andy, this is Ken. Can you hear me all right?
Yes, I can.
Yeah, listen, first of all, stop apologizing. No need to apologize and no need to sort of feel like you're a fly in the ointment, because you're asking a series of really important questions that, reflect, and they're absolutely appropriate for any director and for you to have those questions and those concerns. The answers to those questions, now here's the practical issue. The answers to your questions, we have them. It's not right that you don't have them, so that's on me and on my, we've got to do a better job of getting the information in a timely way, so you're not caught off guard like this, and I apologize for that. But the answers to the questions could take, a good half hour, 45 minutes. You might have more questions. So I want to make a suggestion, just in the interest of time and practicality. I would be happy to jump on a call, you, me, and Betsy, in the next few days to answer all of the questions you just laid out about kind of how we got to where we are. I have been pretty involved in this. I think Betsy would agree. And so I can help address some of those things. And I guess I have the benefit of, because I've been involved, I've got more background information because I've been learning and asking the exact same questions you've been asking. But we could do a call and answer your questions, hopefully satisfy most of them. But the action, we're not going to take action, I don't believe, Betsy, today, that is inconsistent. We're not making any big decisions today that really.
So are we? So Ken, we're not going to vote on the approval of this?
Not on the whole. We're not going to vote on the approval of the whole big final approach to the project. We are doing, and you pointed this out, Andy, for better for worse, a little bit more of a month-to-month deal right now, until we get the whole thing fully baked at a level where we can say good to go. And so there are some action items that Betsy wants us to consider, but no, we're not having a discussion today about a final board sign-off on this complete budget to get the project done by November 1st, because there's still a couple missing pieces that the staff is working on. So again,
excuse me, Ken, am I the only board member that doesn't have all the data?
No, I think what's happened.
Does everybody in that room have what you have?
So Andy, if I can, this has been the point of discussion on the agenda at every board meeting, I want to say for the last 6 to 8 months. Since November. Unfortunately, or not, because the MBBA and TSFC boards do not need to meet as frequently as the HFA, SONYMA, and AHC boards, the MBBA and TSFC boards have not been in each of those board meetings when all of the data that you mentioned have been distributed and discussed extensively. So I think that may be part. So the background knowledge that Ken is referring to is essentially is what has been presented to the board in both public and executive session over the last 7 months, I believe. So.
And I would just, sorry.
And Andy, you and Linda are the two members of MBBA that are not also in the other boards. So as a result, the two of you have not had the benefit of these discussions at the prior meetings.
Well,
I'm sorry.
I got to share Andy's reaction, though, to some extent. You know, I also, when I first got the memo 2 days ago, to look at something in a vacuum on a month-to-month basis is confusing for somebody like me, frankly, that doesn't have a big handle on a project of this scope. It would have been more useful to me to see the progression of decisions that we made on an abstract leading up to what you're asking for today. It's just, it feels like a series of change. You know, it's almost like we're driving blind a little bit. So,
I mean, as a courtesy, if you do this item was on the agenda, you should at least, besides the resolution and the transmittal letter, you should at least give us some summary of how we got to this point and why what the expenditures are for, what were the deliverables, you know, so at least like we said. I mean, it shocks us. It shocks me to be on this board and then something shows up on the agenda that we have no background knowledge of whatsoever, and expect us to vote the approval. I'm going to vote in the negative if we introduce this resolution, you know, whatever it is, even on a temporary basis. I'm voting in the negative just by virtue of the fact that I think it's a disgrace that you expect us at some point to get involved in a matter that you guys have been dealing with for months on 2 days' notice. I just.
Andy,
so, I mean,
again.
I said my piece. I'm sorry, Chairman. I said my piece.
No. And you said it well and clearly and passionately, and I totally get it. Betsy wants to make a comment.
I was just going to reiterate Ken's offer. I'm happy to hop on the phone. I'd also be happy if people want to go into the discussion and talk about it now. Whatever the board decides is the appropriate course of action.
Andy, again, this is not it's a poor excuse for miscommunication with you, and I apologize. But I think I just want to go back to what Linda said. In the board meetings that we have every month of all the other agencies, we've spent a lot of time on this, and a fair amount of it, for better or for worse, because of sensitive business issues with vendors, has been an executive session. And so that's one of the problems when we do that, and I want to acknowledge Alex and everybody else about executive session, is then it's harder for someone like for you who are not part of that meeting to get that information that we were privy to in executive session. So that's a flaw in our process and in our governance. And again, I'm going back to you saying that you should have had much more background. The questions you're asking now are all reasonable and important questions, and there's no excuse for you not having all that information in advance of getting the stuff that you got. Again, the technical reason is the boards that you're on don't meet as frequently as the rest of our boards, where we've been sharing this stuff both publicly and in executive session. So, maybe today, and you've made your point really clear. I don't think there's any doubt about that, even from about 450 miles away. I would be happy, Andy, really, I feel like I got to do this, to get on the phone with you and Betsy and take the time. I'm not saying you're going to like what you hear, but you'll get all the facts and all the background and the whole story. And I'm not looking to change your vote.
I'm not sure you're going to like what you hear.
but I've heard it before. But I agree. But I want to get you up to speed. But I'd like to do that just like you, me, and Betsy on the phone. I think that way it could be focused on your questions. It could be personalized to get you the information that you need. And maybe you could abstain or vote negative on the actions we take today. But so we can keep moving forward, you know what I mean? And then bring you up to speed. And we're going to do it. Trust me, Andy, in a month we're going to have the same discussion about BAM. And there might be a bigger ticket question on the table. And I definitely need you to be fully informed before we have that meeting in May.
Yeah.
I just, Ken, I have to say that I think it would have, I have been at the other meetings, and I expressed this to you privately. I share the confusion that's presented by getting a document in a vacuum that's calling for a large additional expenditure without seeing the backup on a document. I just think that was putting us in a tough position.
Right.
Ken,
Yeah.
I think, first of all, I think you do an excellent and admirable job. So and this is a very complex thing, we've had to, of necessity, go into executive session because of some potential litigation and other complications, but I think you also appropriately did this in public. I am a little surprised you didn't brief Andy, and I think that the input that Andy and Chris and DOB make to this board, given their extraordinary experience and competence, is something that I really value, as we have listened to DOB up on TV, and Chris, who's usually here, and Andy, who's frequently here. So I defer to listen to what you guys, want to do, but it's just so important that Andy be briefed and be comfortable on these issues, because I also look to his expertise on these things.
Thanks, John. No, it's an important point. Totally agree.
But I really do. I do want to say you guys have spent a lot of time answering a lot of questions, particularly many from me, and your leadership's exceptional. So, but I don't know how you want to end it.
I want to go back to Andy. Andy, what do you want to do? What do you feel like doing today?
Well, what are you doing today?
Betsy, you wanna talk
Are we
about-
bringing this
you
to a
wanna talk
vote?
about the 3 things that we would be.
Let's
Not voting on this is for the project, not an option.
right. We need to bring the items that you were sent. We do need to bring to a vote. And Betsy, was about to present them. We could go into executive session if people have enough questions, and it sounds like, Dave, you may as well.
What are the grounds for the executive session, though, Council?
It would be the same, it's to discuss
Contract.
Sensitive
contractual
business
and-
issues.
contractual issues and financial issues
And those
with
are-
regard to a corporation.
Those are sufficient.
Absolutely.
Yeah, yeah. So, let me sort of just informally look at people and say, wink, wink, executive session would be helpful. We could do it. And it'd give Betsy a chance to make her presentation.
And for Andy's benefit.
And for Andy's benefit. I still want to say, Andy, some of the bigger picture background questions, the Gardner report, the how we got to where we are, the backstory, I'd like to do with you offline with Betsy to really hit your specific questions, and your, the information that you need yourself, because we didn't do a good job keeping you in the loop. But we could do executive session now if that's how directors feel, in order to have a thorough discussion and vetting of the issues we're going to be asked to vote on, because as Betsy pointed out, we do really need to vote on this stuff today. And if people aren't there yet, that's a problem, just operationally and otherwise, right, Betsy? So.
Yeah.
Let's do it.
And I can, so whatever. people don't-
Well,
I'm
all
happy
right,
to
so
do that.
Linda, let's do
But
executive
it's,
session.
but it's the questions that he had so many in a row, I didn't write them down, but as long as the questions he asked in the open session are answered in an open session, to the extent they are allowed to be, given the construct of.
Some cannot be answered in
Okay.
open session. So
Right.
we
Well, I
have
don't
to
wanna
go
speak
into
But
that.
that's why I
Andy
suggested,
more
Andy and I can
capable
talk, and that's not a violation of
Okay.
open meetings law. So.
Great.
I mean, Ken, I'm amenable to talking offline with you on a lot of these questions. And
All right.
I don't even know if you got to go into the executive session if Betsy's just going to make a presentation as to, what we have in this transmittal letter and the resolution.
I would be happy to make that presentation. I'd be happy to make myself available as soon as this afternoon to
Could go
talk.
through it. and-
Yeah, how about we do this? How about we have Betsy make the presentation, and then we look around and see if we want to grill her, put her on the hot seat, we'll go to an executive session, but if we're okay based on her presentation moving forward, we'll go to a vote. Fair?
Sure.
And you and I have a date. You and I, Andy, have a deal with Betsy to address your particular, your very legitimate and important questions offline.
Yeah, and David too, or anybody else that wants to participate.
Right. Absolutely. Well, we
Well,
got a
we'll
little
do
rule.
it in
It
multiple.
can only be two of us.
We'll do it in multiple.
On the open meetings law, two's
Oh, I got
company,
it.
three's a problem.
I get it.
I will read.
Let's go to Betsy.
Great. So before I start the presentation of the 3 action items, I want to reiterate, 1, my offer to talk today. 2, as I hope I've made clear in the past, I'm happy to have individual conversations with any board member leading up to any of these action items at any time. or periodic, in keeping with open meetings law, periodic updates outside of board meetings on this topic. It's an incredibly important one, both in terms of the financial investment. It's also an incredibly important one in terms of the transformational opportunity for the agency, and I want to make sure that people understand both. With respect to the three items that are in front of the board for action today, one is an increase to the BAM budget of $3.5 million, which is the projected expense for the upcoming month. The second, as we've done in the past, is a corresponding increase to the maximum amount payable under the IT consultant panel for BAM of $2.5 million. So as you can see in the memo, the total cost is $3.5 million. Only $2.5 of that is our labor-related costs, and those are the ones for which we increase the IT consultant panel. And the third, which is a new one, has not come up before in our prior resolutions, is approval of a contract for Carasoft of $629,000. As was explained in the memo, these expenses were originally embedded within the contract with Phoenix, a contract that was ultimately terminated. In that termination, it was contemplated for those costs which had not yet been billed for or paid to then be subsequently billed directly to the agency. And so this is a contract to allow us to make those payments.
Good. Questions for Betsy?
Yes.
Just add one point of context, and mainly for Dave and for Andy. I do think this is responsive to feedback you've gotten from the board, because one reaction is, well, why are we doing this month to month? And I will just reflect, without going into what we've talked about in executive session, that we have put constraints on you as a board, that we essentially want you to come back to us with frequency, and that's far from an ideal operational position, but I feel like that's an operational position I want everyone to understand that the board has imposed on you. And so the unusual position of having to approve kind of the month-to-month installments, I think, reflects where we've gotten to, and I think I completely agree with Andy. There's a lot of background and context here, and if you haven't had it, this is very surprising, but having been through those conversations, I just want to add that point of context, which I think is important to understand what's before us right now.
Thank you.
Also,
I will say that in looking forward, hopefully after an ability to provide that context and answer any other questions, I would love the opportunity to come back to the board next month and ask for approval for the entire budget. Notwithstanding that approval, would happily come back on a month-to-month basis to provide an update. So thank you.
Betsy, two quick things. Just for clarity again, and we've seen this in prior monthly meetings, the $3 million, the 2.5, if I'm rounding up numbers, on the IT panel is embedded in the 3. You're not asking us,
absolutely.
just so people know the math, you're not asking us to approve $5.5 million.
No.
It's sort of like an appropriation and an allocation or whatever,
Exactly.
right? It's like
Yes.
you need to have the budget of the $3 million, and then you need to be able to pay out in the period
Yes.
the authority to make the payment.
Yes.
So we're really talking about $3 million. And
Thank you.
and that is, and again, I keep apologizing to Andy, but that is consistent, this idea of the board approving a month-to-month payment, Andy, to Nestor's point, because as we started to have challenges with this project and it started to go over budget, the board agreed that we couldn't simply, I don't want to put it bluntly, but I will, kind of, write a big blank check or sign off on a big new chunk of money for this until we had a lot of issues like the governance of the project and certain deliverables, a realistic timeline, a scrubbing of our relationships with the various vendors. We wanted things to get resolved before we could look at a final sign-off on a revised budget for the project. And to be candid, Andy, not all those things have been resolved yet. And so that's why we've been doing this month-to-month thing, which Nestor's right, not necessarily efficient economically. We want to get out of this. but as a board, there's some things that still need to be satisfied before, and maybe it's May, cross our fingers, we'll see. Betsy can come back and say, here's the plan to get to November 1, and the fully baked budget, is the board on board? So we're not there yet, just like you, Andy, and that's why we're doing this month-to-month deal.
Well, who are we paying on a month-to-month basis? Who's the vendor? Who's the $3.5? Who's the $3.5 million go to?
So the work is done by outside vendors. Betsy, you want to just do a short answer, quick answer to that?
Sure. The $3.5 million is going in part to a vendor by the name of ProLink that we've discussed as the sort of front end operations of the future system, and there was a payment to Edward Daniels Group, through which we are getting SAP implementation services. And then, as you can see on page 2 of the memo.
I see that. Betsy, I see who we're paying. Does this all comply with our procurement guidelines too, relative to bidding? I mean,
yes.
So we got quotes from other. Go ahead.
Yeah, we'll review the history. That's a good question too, Andy, and we can review that history of how we ended up with ProLink, SAP, and the other vendors. But yes, they all were the result of procurements, some of them done a couple of years ago.
Right, okay.
Other questions for
how
Betsy?
How much are we over budget? How much
That's a tricky question because it's been a bit of a move. When you say over budget, it's a sort of a moving target in terms of where we started and what the staff is looking for to get the job done.
And how about payment to date? How much we paid out to date?
That's an easier question to answer. Betsy, what's the rough number?
The approved budget to date is $29.3 million.
That's the approved budget, and how much have we spent?
A little bit over, almost 26.
26 million. And where do you think we are in completing the project? Are we halfway home? 3/4 home?
With respect to the budget?
With respect to the project.
So our current go live date, which we are all pushing extremely hard to hit, is November 1st of this year.
I think we're rounding third, Andy.
We're rounding third, and at $3.5 million a month times what? 6 months?
Well,
5 months?
It's not a perfectly consistent run rate of that nature, but your math is not.
You're close.
Okay.
And we want to get out of the month-to-month, right, and have a final, project budget instead of the month-to-month thing, so that we're comfortable with, if we get there, hopefully next month, and then they can finish it up.
But it does start going down. I mean, this month is higher because we're paying additional software licenses that weren't paid or billed to us in the past of over 600K. As well as some other back invoices. But it starts hovering around $2 million a month.
Andy, there's a PowerPoint we'll get you for our phone call that Betsy prepared.
Well, is there a way, Ken, I'm sorry, is there a way that, I don't know how many members of the board have this report, but is there a way we could get a copy of the Gartner report that everybody's relying upon?
Yes. They did a terrific report. Yeah. Okay. And you... Well, we'll send you some stuff but in advance of this call, so you can look at the materials and ask Betsy and questions about it.
I appreciate that. Okay, I'm done.
And we won't send it the night before, I promise.
Yeah, leave it up to Alex.
And you guys can decide.
No, not putting that on Alex. Betsy and I will figure it out. We'll get it to you, and we'll get you up to speed, I promise, and I apologize.
All right, sounds good, Ken.
Do I? Although
Other directors have questions for Betsy on the item she's put before us. And again, like, wink at me if you want to go to executive session to discuss it further. Where's Jesse? Jesse, you're not winking at me. Jesse, do you have any questions for Betsy?
No, I'm good, thank you.
Thanks. John?
Betsy, in
Yes.
any of the three points that you're asking our approval for, is there anything that was not anticipated in our last more major briefing last month? Because
No.
it seems very straightforward this month, and the previous months has been long discussions.
No, were there any of the costs that were not anticipated? There was nothing here.
These are the anticipated.
Everything was previously anticipated.
Yeah, it seems
Yeah.
more routine, if I could use that word in this context, than the previous month's requests.
Yes.
Is there any?
Again, it is completely consistent with the briefing that was given in March, except for the one piece of information which I felt we were asked to leave the March meeting and go sharpen our pencils and figure out how to drive the budget down, and that's the one new piece of information.
Right, which is not part of the resolution.
Not for everyone, obviously. We need to make sure that we've fully briefed everyone in the same way, but that's the only thing that was not previously contemplated.
We didn't really talk much about the Kara soft contract, but it sounds like that's just come due.
Yes.
Right.
Yeah.
Is there anything Gardner would
But
like
those
to add?
costs were assumed in the budget, yes. So
Good.
I was just gonna say, I'm sorry.
Sorry, please.
Is there anything Gardner would like to add to guide us or
With regard
add a
to
point? You've been following this acutely.
To a degree, right? We're, I think we haven't made, based on it from the time that that we delivered our final report, we've been, the only work that we've been doing is really working on lowering the numbers. And
We
so-
like that.
Yeah, and so to speak to prior invoices and other payments to the other vendors, we cannot do that.
Thank you. I want to, just a little footnote for Betsy, because Andy got me thinking about this. Whatever we prepare, and let's prepare information for Andy and schedule a call at his convenience. But let's consider doing the same thing for Joyce Miller, should she be interested, because unfortunately Joyce hasn't, for scheduling conflicts, hasn't been able to be part of these discussions. And if Joyce could attend the meeting in May and have all the same kind of questions, absolutely understandably, that Andy has presented today. So let's reach out to Joyce and give her that option for kind of a catch-up course, on where we are.
Ken, this is Linda.
Hi. Hi, Linda.
Hi. I know we have the issue of creating another meeting, but if there's a way to include me or share whatever materials are being shared with me as well, and I can follow up with questions, that would be great.
Absolutely. That's great. Yeah. It makes total sense. And again, I think it's complicated to do a meeting, as you know, under open meetings law that's more than me and one other person.
Open meeting.
Yes.
We could
schedule
schedule
for the MBBA and TSFC boards
Right.
out of
And Joyce.
cycle, and Joyce could attend if she
Yeah,
so
you know what?
chose.
We could do it as a meeting.
And do it like a
If
conference.
that's a good idea, Linda. And we could give Joyce the option, so it would be myself and you, Linda, Andy, maybe Joyce, Betsy, Ken. Maybe between now and May, we set that. Is that doable? That would be an open meeting. It would be like this, video conference. We'd be here. The other directors who feel up to speed on these issues wouldn't have to attend. We wouldn't take notes of your poor attendance record. No, seriously, it would be optional.
We actually have we would want to know if other board members want to attend, because then we would notice a meeting
Yeah.
for them.
I'd like to be in on that meeting.
Okay, so.
But couldn't you notice the meeting, and then it sounds like it's going to need to be an executive session, basically.
It's a quorum.
You just said.
Alex and I will work it out.
We can have an MBBA TSFC meeting, and board members from the other boards can just attend as
Okay.
guests.
Yep,
Right.
so we'll do that.
Right. Good. Thank you, Alex.
Okay.
Andy, you see what you started?
Ken,
Should I apologize again?
No, stop apologizing. John,
I pulled it back.
John, what were you going to say? Sorry.
No, I was going to say, but it might be mooted after that conversation. Just, I don't think it violates the open meetings law at all if you provide us with whatever written material you're providing and
It's
you
executive
provide
session.
us.
There are.
Some of that material is executive
Some
session
of the
material.
material is confidential and has been given out in executive session and taken back. So,
You think it was taken.
It was supposed to.
He made sure.
How about,
You're
I
fine.
will
Left on the table.
He was
Okay,
taking-
I will
well,
commit.
within the constraints, I think providing us all with the same written material at a minimum and the opportunity to attend in whatever fashion you choose. And
Well,
if it's
it would have to
open,
be
if
by
it's
video.
executive, if it's however you,
Yeah.
there's a way to,
we'll work it
there's a
out.
way to do it, I'm sure.
Right. But I do want to, thinking of Linda's comment, thinking of Andy's questions, and of Joyce, John, and Dave, I want to make this point that for me, a goal for this meeting is to provide directors who feel like they're not fully informed on background to bring them up to speed and satisfy, answer all of those questions, the historical questions, everything that was just raised, and that people who've missed the meetings are likely to, to feel like Joyce, for example, I keep using her name. So that's the point of this, and to share materials in executive session that have been previously shared in executive session to the extent that we can do that. But I just want to be clear that I think that's the point of the meeting. It isn't going to be to look at any new information and make any decisions, right? Because that's going to be, hopefully, the gist of the May meeting, right? It's almost like an educational session, but it's an open meeting, or it's, right?
Or a review.
A review.
A review.
How did we get here? Well, right? Right? Fair?
That's fair.
Alex, make sense? Okay, good. So now, any further questions for Betsy on the matters, the items that she's presenting to us this morning?
Move it to a vote.
Right, I will note, just as a technical matter, Carasoft, we are awaiting them to be registered with the state of New York as a foreign corporation. So while we're authorizing payment, today we will not make payment to them until they are duly authorized to do business within the state.
All right, now a test. How do we account for that? Just kidding. From the prior conversation Mary gave us. Come on.
I have no doubt that we will adequately.
No such thing as an accounting
So
joke.
now before the boards is a resolution of the State of New York Finance Agency, the State of New York Mortgage Agency, the Affordable Housing Corporation, the State of New York Municipal Bond Bank Agency, and the Tobacco Settlement Financing Corporation approving the band budget, compensation for IT consultants, and a contract with Carasoft for support and maintenance of SAP licenses. Assuming the first and second previously entered for all agencies, all in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
I'll abstain.
Thank you. So noted. The motions are carried and the resolution adopted.
Linda, thank you. Betsy, thank you, everybody. We're now going to move on. Thanks, Ken. Thanks, Mark. Welcome aboard, Mark. There will be no discussion on these items unless board members so request. Item 3 is a resolution accepting the Audit Committee self-evaluation.
Now before all 5 boards is a resolution of the State of New York Mortgage Agency, the New York State Housing Finance Agency, the State of New York Affordable Housing Corporation, the State of New York Municipal Bond Bank Agency, and the Tobacco Settlement Financing Corporation accepting the Audit Committee self-evaluation. Assuming the first and second previously entered for all 5 boards, all in favor, please signify by saying aye.
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 The motions are carried and the resolution adopted.
Item 4 is a resolution accepting the Governance Committee self-evaluation. Linda?
Now before all 5 boards is a resolution of the State of New York Mortgage Agency, the State of New York Housing Finance Agency, the State of New York Affordable Housing Corporation, the State of New York Municipal Bond Bank Agency, and the Tobacco Settlement Financing Corporation accepting the Governance Committee self-evaluation. Assuming the first and second previously entered for all 5 boards, all in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
The motions are carried and the resolution adopted.
The next 5 items on the agenda are information items. There'll be no discussion on them unless board members or directors so request. Item 5 is the quarterly investment report. Item 6 is the administrative budget report as of January 31st, 2019. Item 7 is the financial statement update, first quarter fiscal 2019, and the third quarter fiscal 2018 in the case of AHC. Item 8 is a review of the agency's first quarterly procurement report for the period commencing November 1, 2018 and ending January 31st, 2019. is, I believe in that, is as part of the procurement report, there's the update on the MWBE procurement, right? Is that that's that section of which I hope you've all had a chance to look at, because again, we did really, the staff of the agency led by Wanda Graham did an amazing job on dramatically exceeding the state goals for MWB procurements. Remember that since 2014, I believe, was the governor raised them from 20 to 25 to finally 30%. And so when you see numbers like this, over 50, 60%, it's really extraordinary. So congratulations. I don't see Wanda here today, but someone please extend my congratulations to her for another great report and to her team. Number 9, which we always see, is the current agency procurements in the lobbying restricted period. There being no further items for the MBBA and TSFC boards, I'm going to ask for a motion and a second to adjourn those meetings. Linda?
Assuming the first and second previously entered for MBBA and TSFC boards, all in favor, please signify by saying aye.
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 The motions are carried. The meetings are adjourned. Our next MBBA and TSFC board meetings are scheduled for Thursday, June 13th, 2019 at 9 a.m.
Great, thank you. The next two items on the agenda. Okay, Andy, thanks very much. We'll be in touch.
Okay, sounds good, Ken. Bye, everyone.
And Linda as well. The next two items on the agenda are SONYMA information items. There's no discussion on them unless directors request it. Now, item 10 is a review of the first quarterly 2018 report on the financial status of our existing hedges. Item 11, SONYMA CRF annual report dated as of February 11th, 2019.
I think Rachel Weeder would like to just summarize that report, a couple of items from it.
Fantastic. Rachel, come on down. Happy to have you.
Hi. Just highlight some of our good work for you. My name is Rachel Weeder, Director of Special Initiatives for Homeownership and Community Development. One of those initiatives is the SONYMA CRF Community Restoration Fund. The statute requires staff to produce an annual report every February that we send to the governor and legislature. It's attached in your packet. So some highlights are that we have received $10 million from Morgan Stanley Attorney General Settlement Funds and $11.3 million from the Royal Bank of Scotland Attorney General Settlement Funds. We've used $10.1 million of that, and we've been able to leverage $112 million in private debt.
You might remind people what CRF is in case they just might have forgotten.
The Community Restoration.
But what it does, what it is.
A subsidiary of SONYMA that allows us to purchase delinquent mortgages and give those borrowers modifications so that they can stay in their homes, hopefully. So we've used all of this money that we've leveraged to buy 570 delinquent mortgage notes to date. And a lot of them are in process. There's a detailed report on where each note is in that pool. We have also received $1 million in appropriation from the legislature that was from the MIF to the SONYMA CRF. That money was to be used to help community land trusts. So we released an RFP and we selected 3 community development financial institutions to create a loan fund to give grants to community land trusts for acquisition rehab, home improvement, and down payment assistance. And so we've selected the awardees and we're about to start working with them on this program, which sort of brings me to the next item. For that program, this is the first time the SONYMA CRF has run a grant program, and so we never had to do environmental reviews before. And so we are asking for authorization for our environmental assessment unit to be able to work for the SONYMA CRF and make sure that we're in compliance with SECRA and SHPO and other regulations that we have to check off.
Terrific report, and you lightly touched on this, but I thought it was in the materials, and it's an important point that I guess sometimes these homes with the defaulted mortgages can be clustered in downtown areas, particularly in parts in upstate and in areas where you have if you didn't do what you were doing, and we ended up with an abandoned building or worse, right? It's really got there's a blighting effect on the local community. So it seems to me another a benefit of this program, and you should be congratulated for it, right? Is the degree to which you're helping people, right, who've for whatever reason have gone into default, but it's a very important preservation strategy, which goes beyond the building, right? It's helping preserve neighborhoods, and also just thinking more, a little negative way to look at it, but like if the alternative is blight, that's not good, right? So there's a little bit of blight preservation going on as well, because we've seen that all across the country. So,
And so, because of my long history here, it's very difficult for SONYMA to get any legislation anytime approved. And what I find interesting and ironic here is that Ruth Ann, this is before she became president, had this idea and came into my office and said, why don't we try to amend the statute so that we can create this this program?
Right.
And I worked on it thinking this is never going to pass because we just never get legislation done. And sure enough, it got passed, and it's incredible the amount of work that's been done. They've leveraged all this additional funds. And it's one of the amazing things that SONYMA has done in the last 10 years. And it was like, if it hadn't been for a staff person here who decided, let's try to do this, and pursued it, would never have happened.
Right.
So
Great.
I'm not just saying that because she's the president now.
I just stole the idea from someone else, so it's not my idea.
She did something nice for SONYMA, which we know is Alex's favorite child.
So, the raise, he wanted, come on.
I stole the idea from someone else, so it's not my idea.
No, Alex, thank you very much. Thank you for pointing it out.
It is.
I just did it to prove Alex wrong.
It's Rachel. Yeah, really. See? It could be done. It can be done.
We're 2 hours into this, so let's speed up on Alex.
Yeah, really. Rachel? Yes. Thank you very much for putting up with us, for your report, for your very good work. Let me note that I bet if Mike Friedman were here today, he'd probably be part of the presentation as well, at some level. And we're acknowledging Mike's not here today. But Rachel, thanks so much.
On that note.
Yeah. Now, since you took me off my script, my friend, put me back on it.
Vote on item 12.
We're up to, yeah.
The co-sequel.
So we're going to move to items on our agenda. No, item 12. Right. Sorry. So, Linda, this is this was the SONYMA action item.
Right.
The resolution approving co-seeker officers. Because seeker always takes more than one person. Co-seeker officers for the SONYMA Community Restoration Fund. Rachel made her presentation. Thank you, Rachel. Linda?
Okay, so now before the SONYMA Board is resolution of the State of New York Mortgage Agency approving appointment of SECOR officers, assuming the first and second previously entered for SONYMA. All in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
The motion is carried and the resolution adopted.
Thank you. We'll now move to the items on our agenda that are to be considered for mortgage insurance by the State of New York Mortgage Agency Mortgage Insurance Committee. So item 13 is a resolution approving 100% mortgage insurance on a $5 million CPC permanent first mortgage loan for 300 West 46th Street plus 3 building, Manhattan, New York County. Again, no Mike today, but that's quite all right. Welcome. You got Lauren. All good.
So 300 West 46th Street is the rehabilitation of 130 low-income units with 12 commercial spaces in 4 scattered site buildings on the west side of Manhattan, running between 46th Street and 9th Avenue and 17th Street near 10th Avenue. The commercial space in these buildings generates a significant amount of the income for these projects. And the rents for the units are very low, between 44% and 55% of AMI. The developer in this project is Clinton Housing. We will enter into a contract with New York City Department of Homeless Services for support services that will be provided by Hudson Guild. There is an HPD subordinate loan, and it is covered by an HPD regulatory agreement. The project is being underwritten at a rent achievement level of 115 to 1 because of the high level of commercial income. The loan amount is $37,000 per unit, which equals 23% of the project's total development cost of $161,000 per unit. Project will break even with a 28% vacancy and collection loss. 18% increase in operating expenses, or 34% of the commercial space vacant.
Great. Any, oh, nice. Got a full color map on this one. Any questions from directors on this item? If not, Linda, let's do it.
Now before the Mortgage Insurance Committee for approval is resolution of the Mortgage Insurance Committee of the State of New York Mortgage Agency approving mortgage insurance and a commitment for the provision thereof for 300 West 14th Street and Building 3 in Manhattan, New York County. Assuming the first and second previously entered for the Mortgage Insurance Committee, all in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
The motion is carried and the resolution adopted.
Great, let's do another. Resolution approving 100% mortgage insurance on a $3,850,000 CPC, permanent first mortgage loan for Gansett Meadow Apartments, which is, oh, Dave, this is out by you. Well, not quite. Yours this is South Fork. But Amagansett, Suffolk County. It's the right county, you know. How about that? Gansett, Amagansett. We wonder where they got the name for this. Linda? Lauren, sorry.
Lauren.
So this project is the new construction of 36 low-income units in Amagansett. This is a 9% tax credit project. There will be a Section 8 contract covering 8 units, and there is additional subsidy from a housing trust fund and an HCR middle-income loans. It is in a high-opportunity area in Suffolk County. The loan amount is $104,000 per unit, which equals 16% of the total development cost of $645,000 per unit. The project breaks even with a 12% residential vacancy or 13% increase in operating expenses. The developer is Georgica Green, and this will be the 6th loan insured for Georgica Green for $66 million of exposure. And I'd like to note that the resolution for this project is actually in your folders.
Thank you, Lauren. We don't, Dave, you know, you're the expert in Suffolk County, but especially this is Amagansett. Affordable housing, you know, on the East End is really a challenge and desperately needed.
This is a drop in the bucket.
I know, not a lot of units considering the need, but it's an important project.
I mean, the one comment I have is 6 units to the acre is a wasted opportunity. You know, I'm going to vote for it. You know, any progress is progress, but to the extent that we have the ability to influence, to leverage our commitments for higher density, especially on the East End of Long Island, I think it's important.
This is Southampton Town, right? Who's Southampton supervisor?
No, this is East Hampton.
It's East Hampton Town. Yeah, that you can imagine.
Now I'm on the other side.
You could imagine the challenge going for the pilot.
I say that with full
going for the pilot and going for density in a place like Amagansett. So, point well taken. Challenging environment, right?
They're certainly providing a lot of parking spaces anyway.
That could be part of the rental income. Okay, Linda, let's do it.
Now before the Mortgage Insurance Committee for approval is resolution of the Mortgage Insurance Committee of the State of New York Mortgage Agency approving mortgage insurance and a commitment for the provision thereof for Gansett Meadow Apartments, Amagansett, Suffolk County. Assuming the first and second previously entered for the Mortgage Insurance Committee, all in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
The motion is carried and the resolution adopted.
15, resolution approving 100% mortgage insurance on a $3,870,000 JP Morgan Chase permanent first mortgage loan for 880 East 147 in the Bronx. Lauren, back to you.
This project is the new construction of 79 low and moderate income units in the Mott Haven section of Bronx. The project includes 40 special needs units, which will have ESHA funding through OMH for rent subsidy and support services. This is a 9% tax credit project. It has an HCR shop subordinate loan. The developer is Martin Dunn Development. Canva is the service provider. They will master lease the supportive units and provide the services. This is the 11th project insured for Dunn Development for a total exposure of $34 million. The loan amount is $48,000 per unit, which equals 10% of the total development cost of $461,000 per unit. It will break even with a 16% vacancy and collection loss, or 22% increase in operating expenses.
Excellent. Good partners for this. Canva, fantastic organization. Martin Dunn, we all know. Any questions for Lauren on this? Linda?
All right.
Let's do it.
Then now before the Mortgage Insurance Committee for approval of the resolution of the Mortgage Insurance Committee of the State of New York Mortgage Agency approving mortgage insurance and a commitment for the provision thereof for 880 East 147th Street, Bronx, Bronx County. Assuming the first and second previously entered for the Mortgage Insurance Committee, all in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
The motion is carried and the resolution adopted.
We'll now move on to the items on our agenda that are to be considered for mortgage insurance by the State of New York Mortgage Agency Mortgage Insurance Committee and the SONYMA Board, and for financing by the HFA Finance and Program Committee and the HFA Board. So this is Alex's way of putting it all in one package for the following items. 16A, resolutions of the Mortgage Insurance Committee of the State of New York Mortgage Agency and of the SONYMA Board recommending and approving 10% mortgage insurance on an HFA first mortgage loan in an approximate amount of $72,340,000 for Bushwick Gardens, in Brooklyn, Kings County. And 16B, I guess I'm supposed to read these resolutions and then Lauren can go through them. 16B are resolutions of the Mortgage Insurance Committee of the State of New York Mortgage Agency and of the SONYMA Board recommending and approving 10% mortgage insurance on an HFA first mortgage loan in an approximate amount of $110,760,000 for Hope Gardens, Brooklyn, Kings County. And item 16C, the third one, resolutions of the State of New York, or the New York State Housing Finance Agency Finance and Program Committee, and of the New York State Housing Finance Agency itself, recommending approval and authorizing financing approval of an amount not to exceed $210 million in tax-exempt and or taxable bonds for the NYCHA Bundle 3 project, which is in Manhattan. Which is in the City of New York and Kings County. This is in Brooklyn as well. So Lauren's going to walk us through these.
I think Miles is actually.
And Miles is going to help.
So I just want to.
Laura's going to turn the microphone to Miles.
But before I do that, I'm just going to note that SONYMA is going to provide mortgage insurance on 10% of the permanent loans for an aggregate exposure of approximately $18.3 million or $14,000 per unit. The mortgage loans will be originated by HFA, and it's anticipated they'll be assigned to Freddie Mac during the permanent loan period when insurance will become effective. The projects each have one or more project-based Section 8 HAP contracts, and they're covered by an HFA regulatory agreement. And I will let Miles address the structure.
Yeah, so bear with me. It's a little bit of a long moment today. So we seek board authorization to finance NYCHA RAD Bundle 3, which will use the agency's investment to fund the acquisition and rehabilitation of 1,321 rental public housing units within the New York City housing portfolio. There'll be 60 residential buildings and 1 community center on scattered sites throughout the Bushwick section of Brooklyn. Affordability will be insured via a Section 8 project-based subsidy. Of the total units, 1,317 units will be covered under this new project-based Section 8 HAP contract that will be issued under the guidelines of the RAD 1 program and the Section 18 programs that are part of the HUD kind of portfolio of programming. Under RAD 1 and Section 18, current residents have the right to remain regardless of income. There will be 4 non-revenue generating supers units throughout the portfolio. The project is part of NYCHA's Permanent Affordability Commitment Together PACT program, which aims to generate a sustainable funding source for extensive repairs and responsible property management while guaranteeing permanent affordability and maintaining tenant rights. PACT is part of the Next Generation NYCHA plan. It's NYCHA's comprehensive 10-year strategic plan. And as part of this plan, this RFP to rehabilitate this project was issued in 2017, and NYCHA selected this development team in 2018. The project totals approximately 32 acres. It's subdivided into 5 cluster groups of housing: Group A and C, Group B and D, Group E, Hope Gardens, and Palmetto Gardens. The 2 clusters, Hope Gardens and Palmetto Gardens, were completed in the early 1980s and served senior populations. Hope Gardens consists of 3 7-story elevator buildings and 1 14-story elevator building. Palmetto Gardens is 1 6-story elevator building. The 3 other clusters are all low-rise. That's A and C, B and D, and E, that were built in the mid-1980s, and they're all 3-story walk-up buildings and serve low-income families. Group B and D includes a standalone single-story community center. The rehabilitation is a comprehensive scope of work that addresses interior apartment renovations, remediation, improvements to common building interiors. It also includes building envelope repairs, including replacement of roofs, windows, damaged masonry, and doors. Building system repairs include replacement of boilers, domestic hot water heaters, radiators, elevators, and trash conveyance facilities. Significant site work will also be done, including repairs to walkways, parking lots, improvement of exterior lighting, and landscaping. The development team is comprised of an experienced group of partners. NYCHA is the largest public housing authority in the country, as we all probably know. Its recent experience, though, with the agency includes another RAD project called Ocean Bay Apartments that totaled 1,395 units, and that was financed in 2016.
Where was Ocean Bay?
It's in the Rockaway Peninsula.
Oh, yeah.
The Edgemere section,
That's a
Beach
Mullis
54th
project.
Street.
No, it was Ocean. Next to Ocean Bay is what's that thing that L&M did?
Ocean Village.
Ocean Village.
Ocean Village is what I was thinking.
It's
That's,
next to Ocean.
but that's RAD too, isn't it?
But it was not NYCHA.
That's true.
That was a RAD 2, yeah. This is a RAD 1. But
So,
yeah.
so is this our third RAD project?
We've done a lot of RAD upstate. Because
Okay.
you can do RAD on Section 8, 236, other HUD programs. This is our second NYCHA
Okay,
RAD.
got it. Thank you. Sorry.
Yep. I've actually got another RAD for you. The next one are two after this.
I like RAD, so
Keep
it's
me on your
good.
toes with RAD.
Buy one, get one free.
So Penrose is a privately owned part of the development team we're talking about. Penrose is a privately owned full service real estate development firm. Penrose does not have experience with the agency, but has significant experience with RAD and public housing projects. They've executed 14 RAD developments throughout the U.S. Acacia is the nonprofit co-developer and service provider as part of the partnership. They'll provide services and relocation coordination during the rehab as well as throughout the permanent period. Property manager will be Pinnacle, who does not have agency experience, but is one of the largest third-party management firms in the U.S., with a portfolio of approximately 175,000 units, including 30,000 affordable units and 600 units of Section 8 and LIHTC housing in New York City. The general contractor will be a joint venture among Procida, who has significant experience on HFA finance projects, as well as Alvin H. Butts, a full-service contracting and construction management firm based in Pennsylvania, who's partnered with Procida on several rehabilitation and new construction projects totaling 1,800 units financed by various public agencies in the state of New York. Financing partners with the agency include Citibank and Redstone as the LIHTC syndicator. And to note, in order to most efficiently allocate HFA resources towards the financing of this project, given its size, we're trying to minimize the use of HFA tax-exempt volume cap here. So the proposed structure is two loans. One is a tax-exempt portion utilizing new issue private activity volume cap that will generate 4% tax credit equity. The other loan will be a tax-exempt portion utilizing state private activity volume cap that has been recycled and does not generate tax credits. There will be no HFA subsidy necessary for this financing.
Was it you, Miles, who explained the recycling, or maybe James did that at our last meeting? So only a month ago, we were schooled in the recycling of unused volume cap, and now you bring it to us in a project. That's cool.
Good plan, that actually.
That was a setup. I don't know if James is still here. So I have a question, and it's a big project and really interesting and important, and I'm sure other directors will have questions too. But I'm sorry, this is just a real simple question, I guess. But, so this is NYCHA, three NYCHA developments, right? NYCHA property. Developed under the RAD program, developers getting everything but the land, 99-year lease, right? So, NYCHA keeps the land, but the developer buys, and with this team comes in, and our financing buys and refurbishes these apartments, which are occupied, right? And probably badly in need of repairs. We know that story. I'm sure there's a simple answer. But why, when this is developers that we know and NYCHA and RAD, why do they come to us for the financing as opposed to, say, the city? Or I thought NYCHA itself could issue debt, but why are we financing it?
Good question. So The city has also financed several of these portfolios already, so I guess that's the first answer. There was 2 that closed in the fall that were that 2017 RFP I kind of referenced early on included 3 portfolios of sites, and they were all going to be financed through RAD. One was in the Twin Parks section of the Bronx, the other in kind of the Mott Haven section of the Bronx, and this one in Bushwick. So those 2 were financed through the city in the fall of this last year, so in 2018. So the city is doing its fair share as well to finance NYCHA through the RAD program, and I think it's just more of an allocation of workload and resources, really.
They took 2, we took 1. Kind of.
All right. Nestor.
So 3 questions. One, is this the most complicated deal we've seen all year? I think the answer is probably yes. It's no, that was a joke. So 2 questions. One, does NYCHA maintain any role post-RAD other than their loan? I mean, are they essentially out of any sort of policy or operational influence, I suppose? I mean, obviously this would be run by a private management company, but I'm just curious. And the second question is about the AMI for post-RAD. So obviously you point out, and I've seen this before, that any current residents get to stay regardless of income. But have we raised the AMI for new residents coming in, and is that going to change, given the normal turnover, is that going to change the composition of the people living in these units?
Mm-hmm. Let me answer the second one first.
Okay.
That's a little bit of an easier one. So we have the project-based voucher subsidy. So these HAP contracts are on every residential unit in the portfolio. That will ensure long-term deep affordability. Upon turnover, households will have to qualify at 50% of AMI or below for that Section 8 voucher.
Is that for all of these units?
Yes.
Oh, okay, that was not clear in the memo.
If there's a vacancy, and there seldom is, right?
Yep.
You're going to have to be at 50% or less of AMI.
Exactly. So the reason that we could have called that out more clearly in the memo, but that's going to be a regulation as part of the HUD use agreements tied to the HAP contracts. So our regulatory agreement will refer to the more restrictive use agreements, which will be under HUD and the HAPs.
And that's true of cross-RAD projects.
Correct.
If it's coming from HUD, then right.
And so the underwriting, just so I'm clear, the underwriting was that underwritten at 80% or 50%?
So it's underwritten to the voucher payment standards, and there's 2 different voucher payment standards. So to add some complication here, there's a RAD voucher payment standard for Section 8 vouchers issued under RAD that is slightly lower than your typical Section 8 voucher payment standard for new issue Section 8 vouchers. The reason the RAD are lower is because the RAD program for HUD is supposed to be kind of a cost-neutral program. They're just shifting public housing dollars into Section 8 dollars and underwriting those into a rent level, so they're slightly suppressed. Those are about 40% of the portfolio are these RAD voucher units. The rest, 60% of the portfolio, are Section 8 voucher units issued under the Section 18 program, which can be underwritten to 100% of FMR, which is about 80% of AMI. And talked about it in the AMI language, but those tenants are continuing to just pay 30% of their income as they are under the public housing program, and we're just kind of leveraging those additional subsidy dollars through the rental contracts to then borrow money and do the repairs.
But under Section 18, is it the same 50% AMI ultimately, or does it go up?
The qualification, so it's a little bit of a difference between like the household income qualification and then the rent. Yeah.
Okay, great. And then on my other question.
Yes, so NYCHA is a 50% partner in the general partnership, and they're also a co-developer. So they'll be receiving 50% of the developer fee proceeds. They have kind of an ongoing relationship in the ownership structure, and they also have a ground lease with use restrictions within that long-term, that 99-year ground lease. So a lot of their affordability is kind of the assurance that this will remain an affordable property is built into the NYCHA ground lease. It's also in our documents, and it's also in the HUD documents, and NYCHA will have a role in the ownership moving forward.
Thank you.
Maybe this is part of Nestor's question, but the developers that take advantage of this and do this work, if at some point they just want to get out of it, flip it, sell it, obviously all those they can, right? Except that all the protections stay in place on affordability.
So There's transfer provisions that are built into our documents. So, any sale of a stake greater than 10% of the ownership, we would have to consent to. So that would be one. So we have a seat at the table if there's any large transfers. Two, NYCHA, I think, would have those types of restrictions built into their ground lease as well. And yeah, they're part of the ownership. So in theory, they would step in and then look to bring in another general partner if that ever became an issue. And HFA would have a seat at the table if that came to be.
Yeah, no, as hopefully there are more and more RAD conversions, one wonders what the controls will be in place because it could start to look like a good business for a savvy developer, right?
It's not necessarily a bad thing.
No.
Again, more capital.
Right.
That's the idea,
Right.
isn't it?
Right.
Yeah.
Right. Well, certainly NYCHA can't do it.
Well, I mean, this is why you're trying to leverage funds. I mean,
Right.
it's actually, I mean, the better developers get into this, the better.
Right.
You know.
Right. And just back on the new units, Miles, so I can make sure I get it. So down the road, there's a vacancy. The tenant has to have an AMI of less than 50, you said 50%, so like $52,000 in New York, right? So, and let's say their income is really $40,000 or something. Because but the rents are NYCHA scaled, so then it's a third of the 40 is their rent, divide by 12?
A third of whatever that household's income is
Right.
what they'll pay.
And that income has to, right.
And then,
Yep,
that
and
makes
then
up
the
the difference.
rent, and then the subsidy will just cover the balance up to the contract.
The new Section 8 voucher, right. Great. Other questions for Lauren or Miles on this? Linda?
Great, we're done.
Right.
Really good. Really great project.
So now before the board, now before the Mortgage Insurance Committee and SONYMA Board for approval are resolutions of the Mortgage Insurance Committee of the State of New York Mortgage Agency and the State of New York Mortgage Agency recommending and approving mortgage insurance and a commitment for the provision thereof for Bridgewood Gardens and Hope Gardens, both in Kings County, assuming the first and second previously entered for the Mortgage Insurance Committee and the SONYMA Board. All in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
The motions are carried and the resolution adopted. Now before the HFA Finance and Program Committee and the HFA Board are resolutions to be adopted that were transmitted in connection with this item, assuming the first and second previously entered for the committee as well as for the HFA Board. All in favor, please signify by saying aye.
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 The motions are carried and the resolution adopted.
All right. Let me turn the page. 17A, resolutions of the Mortgage Insurance Committee of the State of New York Mortgage Agency and of the SONYMA Board recommending and approving 100% mortgage insurance on an $8 million HFA permanent first mortgage loan for Casa Pasiva, Brooklyn, Kings County. And 17B, resolutions of the State Housing Finance Agency, Finance and Program Committee, and of the New York State Housing Finance Agency itself recommending approval and authorizing financing approval of an amount not to exceed $27,880,000 in tax-exempt and or taxable bonds for Casa Pasiva in Brooklyn, Kings County. Lauren, back to you.
So this is the substantial rehabilitation of 8 multifamily walk-up buildings with 146 low-income units in Brooklyn. There will be subordinate subsidy funding from HCR and HPD. 48 units will have enhanced Section 8 tenant-based vouchers. The project is being developed by Riseborough. This will be the 8th loan insured for Riseborough, its predecessor, for total exposure of $24.6 million. The loan amount is $54,000 per unit, which equals 15% of the total development cost of $367,000 per unit. And the project will break even with an 8% increase in operating expenses or a 10% residential vacancy.
Good morning. I'm
Hi.
here to present for your approval the adoption of a resolution authorizing the issuance of an amount not to exceed $320,000 in tax-exempt bonds and $3,358,000 in HFA subsidy for the Casa Pasiva project. Casa Pasiva consists of the acquisition and substantial rehabilitation of 8 walk-up buildings containing a total of 146 units located across 9 city blocks in Bushwick, Brooklyn. The project will preserve and extend the useful life of these solid brick masonry buildings built approximately between 25 and 100 years ago. The project furthers the governor's housing plan by addressing local housing needs, preserving affordable housing, and promoting community revitalization. Of the 146 units, the project contains 14 one-bedrooms, 114 2 bedrooms and 15 3-bedrooms. 143 of these units will be set aside for households with incomes at or below 60% of the area median income, and the remaining 3 units will be set aside for 3 on-site superintendents. The project will use the agency's investment to fund the preservation of these 8 buildings in 2 different clusters, and the scope of work was developed based on the Green Physical Needs Assessment for these properties, and that anticipates the following scope of work: exterior improvements, including new facades, the replacement of the roof and parapets, new windows, exhaust fans, and sidewalks, upgrades to public spaces, the corridors, entryways, new intercom systems, upgrade to steam boilers, new kitchens and baths, new flooring, electrical upgrades, the installation of new appliances, and new doors. The scope of work for this project is unique. It is going to be a passive house renovation, which is something that we're really excited about because it will meet really rigorous energy efficiency standards. And in order to meet those standards, the project will contemplate using, it essentially will wrap the outside of the building in a new facade, which increases the energy efficiency by reducing the airflow in and out of the building. Additionally, there'll be a new HVAC system, which is placed on the roof. There will be new triple pane windows installed, new LED lamps and fixtures, and lots of other energy wrapping of the appliances and pipes, etc. So tenants will be in place during this rehabilitation, and the borrower has submitted to us a plan. They will renovate the buildings line by line, and each night there will be service restored so that tenants are able to use kitchens and bathrooms to full capacity during this renovation.
Wow.
All 8 of the buildings are existing affordable housing buildings that have city and state affordability restrictions. The developer is Riseboro Community Partnership, formerly known as Ridgewood Bushwick Senior Citizens Council. Riseboro has built or preserved over 1,600 housing units throughout New York City. Their last HFA project was Goodwin Himrod in 2009. And Riseboro has developed and managed and currently manages 3 passive house properties. The syndicator is Richmond, and the tax credit pricing is at 4.5. Chase will serve as the construction period bond credit enhancer, and SONYMA will provide the permanent mortgage insurance. The general contractor is FGPH Corporation, which has significant experience doing tenant-in-place rehabilitation. The architect is CBRA, whose principal is Chris Benedict, who similarly has experience doing passive house renovation. And the managing agent will be Riseboro Community Partnership. The total development cost is estimated at $53.4 million, which is about $366,000 a unit. This project is seeing higher upfront costs compared to a typical rehab due to the extensive scope of work required to meet passive house standards. And in order to offset some of these upfront costs that the agency is incurring, we had a discussion with SONYMA so that we're able to realize a portion of the utility savings in the underwriting. So the operating costs for this project are anticipated to be significantly lower than on a comparable project. The other funding sources include NYSERDA. This is the first building that's going through the NYSERDA Record of New York program. It will receive $1.8 million in funding from this program. And through that program, that looks at one specific building in the cluster so that they're able to do a comparison in the future, and it also funds scope items that other funding sources don't typically fund. HPD will also be providing a subordinate loan of approximately $4.9 million. And the project is expected to obtain a full real estate tax exemption for 60 years under the New York City 420C tax incentive program.
Well, that's,
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Very helpful. And did you say that we haven't seen Riseboro since 2009?
That is according to my notes from after.
Oh, I believe you. But that's 10 years.
I think they've been on the 9% side, so it wouldn't have come before this board.
Okay. Yeah, because they're still an active organization under new leadership, right? Doing, I mean, there's a long history, right, to Ridgewood Bushwick. And,
yes, they just use the other side of the house, our house.
Yeah, yeah. Interesting. And now we know from your description what the pasiva part of the name refers to. It isn't meant for people who just want to hang out. Like, hey, let's go live in Casa Pasiva. It sounds.
a positive term now.
It's really, yeah.
Being passive is good.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
It's usually said with a slight German, passive house.
Passive house. Right. Very good. Questions from directors?
I'm just curious to hear a little bit more about the kind of what we're doing, or I guess NYSERDA might be doing to look at this as a kind of pilot or a model. I don't know. I actually haven't seen much affordable housing. I mean, I'm familiar with the passive house design, but haven't seen it on the affordable side. And I'm just curious what we're doing or what NYSERDA is doing to capture that, because if it's a model that works, it's obviously the right direction. I mean, setting the aesthetics of the building wrap aside, which I won't comment on, but just as a design, if you're going to be, reducing energy costs and energy usage, 60 to 80%, that's incredibly impressive.
So this is the first round of this NYSERDA issued an RFP. This is one of the projects in the RFP. This is the first project in that RFP that's being funded. So it is a true pilot program. So I think that we'll have a better sense of it once the building is up and running. Yeah. And I think Riseborough was able to make a compelling case because they have already developed and managed 3 passive houses.
But not affordable.
Yes, affordable.
New construction. This is I think maybe one of the first rehab passive houses.
This is the first rehab that we know of that is doing passive house in New York City and likely in New York State as well. And so I think that we'll have a better sense once this project is completed, but because Riseborough already has those 3 buildings that are operating, they were able to provide the operating information for those buildings so that we could get some sense of comfort that they are actually able to achieve these really low operating expenses.
Terrific. Thank you.
Yeah, they hand out a lot of sweaters to tenants, it's turn down the heat. That works.
I mean, actually, I bet, it's probably... when we put insulation in our house, it was hotter all the time. I mean, I bet this is actually, if they do it right.
They do it right. Yeah. But you're right, Nestor. This is the retrofit of these old buildings to meet these environmental goals is tricky and expensive, right? So let's see how hopefully works. Great. Questions, comments? Linda, we good to go?
Yep, and just for clarification, the HFA boards are being asked to approve funding in an amount not to exceed $28,020,000, which is the amount that Rebecca referenced, but our script had referenced a different amount. Yep, so just for clarity for the board.
Right.
Now before the Mortgage Insurance Committee and SONYMA Board for approval is resolution of the Mortgage Insurance Committee of the State of New York Mortgage Agency and the State of New York Mortgage Agency recommending and approving mortgage insurance and a commitment for the provision thereof for Casa Pasiva, Brooklyn, Kings County, assuming the first and second previously entered for the Mortgage Insurance Committee and the SONYMA Board. All in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
The motions are carried and the resolutions adopted. Now before the HFA Finance and Program Committee and the HFA members are resolutions to be adopted that were transmitted in connection with this item, assuming the first and second previously entered for the committee and the members. All in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
The motions are carried and the resolutions adopted.
18A and 18B. 18A, resolutions of the Mortgage Insurance Committee of the State of New York Mortgage Agency and of the SONYMA Board recommending and approving 100% mortgage insurance on a $12,340,000 HFA permanent first mortgage loan for Southeast Towers 2 in Rochester. And 18B, resolutions of the New York State Housing Finance Agency, Finance and Program Committee, and of the New York State Housing Finance Agency recommending approval and authorizing financing approval of an amount not to exceed $63,005,000 in tax-exempt or taxable bonds, and the making of an HCR Mitchell-Lama program subsidy loan in an amount not to exceed $37,946,626 for Southeast Towers 2. That's the same project in Rochester, Monroe County. Lawrence Back. Well, actually, she never left.
This project represents the rehabilitation of 336 low-income units in 2 Mitchell-Lama developments in Rochester. A project-based Section 8 HAP contract will cover 267 units, and the project will also benefit from HCR subordinate debt, and there are existing HFA and UDC loans which will be assumed. The project is being developed by Conifer. This will be the 25th project insured for Conifer for a total of $112.6 million in exposure, and that's net of some that have already paid off with Conifer. The loan amount is $36,000 per unit, which equals 13% of the total development cost of $284,000. The project will break even with a 10% vacancy and collection loss, or a 7% increase in operating expenses.
So we seek the board's authorization to finance Preserve Set, which is the new name for the formerly known Southeast Towers.
Good to know.
Branding exercise for them.
Mhm.
We'll be using funding to rehabilitate 336 units and the demolition of 40 units, a parking garage, and a community room of a Mitchell-Lama affordable housing development in the city of Rochester. Affordability will be ensured via Section 8 project-based subsidy for 267 units that are already covered under an existing project-based Section 8 HAP contract issued under HUD's RAD 2 program. 49 units will be set aside for households earning 50% of AMI and below, and 19 units will be set aside for households earning 60% of AMI and below. The project is part of the 44 property portfolio of Mitchell-Lama projects that were transferred from ESD to HFA in 2013. The project is located within the inner loop of downtown Rochester, directly adjacent to the Strong Museum and the inner loop East Transformation Project. The rehabilitation of this property is a city priority. Future phases of the project's redevelopment strategy will include new construction of affordable housing to thoughtfully connect the site to the surrounding neighborhood and to further complement the goals set forth in the inner loop transformation project. The rehabilitation is a comprehensive scope of work that addresses interior apartment renovations, remediation, and improvements to common building interiors. Also included are building envelope repairs, including the replacement of roofs, windows, damaged concrete walls and balcony slabs, as well as facade repairs and aesthetic improvements. Building system repairs include new heat recovery ventilation units, elevator upgrades, and replacement of domestic water risers and hot water systems. Significant site work will also be done, including repairs to walkways, parking lots, improvement of exterior lighting and landscaping. The development team is comprised of Conifer and Conifer affiliates. Conifer has significant agency experience, most recently on Blue Heron Apartments, Golf Spa, and Fort Hill Preservation in the city of Canandaigua that were financed in 2017 and 2018, respectively. Financing partners on this transaction with HFA are Citibank and Redstone as the LIHTC syndicator.
Questions about this project in Rochester, anybody? It's a big project, right? I mean, it's a lot of units.
It is.
And it's $176 per square foot? I mean, it's a lot of rehab work for that.
Per unit.
I know.
Yes.
I'm just saying that on this, there's the hard cost per square foot number. When I see a number with a one handle, I'm like, how do they get it? Like, who's doing the work for?
It's very expensive, largely because of the.
No, I don't think that's. I'm saying that's not expensive. Don't you think?
Well, the hard costs are higher than, for example, like the Night Show transaction we looked at, we're about 155. This is slightly above that.
All right.
It's a lot of it is to do with the expensive concrete facade.
Yeah.
And some of the cracking along the there's the balconies.
Right.
And it's in really bad shape. And
Got it. You know what? I guess I wasn't forgetting that this is right. It's rehab, so it's an old building.
It's an old building.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But
the after pictures look better than the before.
They're doing some aesthetic improvements to the facade to try and kind of.
Yeah, they're going to have to make it passive and wrap it in tinfoil.
Exactly.
Okay. Questions on this one? Thank you very much.
All right,
Linda?
now before the Mortgage Insurance Committee and the Sunny Board for approval is resolutions of the Mortgage Insurance Committee of the State of New York Mortgage Agency and the State of New York Mortgage Agency recommending and approving mortgage insurance and the commitment for the provision thereof for Southeast Towers to Rochester, Monroe County. Assuming the first and second previously entered for the Mortgage Insurance Committee and the Sunny Board, all in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
The motion is carried and the resolution adopted. Now before the HFA Finance and Program Committee and the HFA members, a resolution to be adopted that were transmitted in connection with this item. Assuming the first and second previously entered for the committee and the members, all in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
The motions are carried and the resolution adopted.
The next item is an information item for the Sunny May The Mortgage Insurance Fund. It's item 19, the activity report for the Mortgage Insurance Committee for the period from March 1st, 2019 through March 31st, 2019. There being no further items for the SONYMA board, I'm going to ask for a motion and a second to adjourn the SONYMA meeting, please.
Assuming the first and second previously entered for SONYMA, all in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
The motion is carried and the resolution is adopted. The meeting is adjourned. Our next meeting is scheduled for Thursday, June 13th, 2019 at 9 a.m.
No May meeting? Not for SONYMA.
Oh, no, that's right, there is a May meeting.
We have a May, right? Between now and June.
I was-
Yep, my bad.
Yep, sorry. We'll make sure we notice
next-
everybody with that.
Exactly. Now we're going to move to the HFA action item, which is number 20. It's a resolution authorizing the making of a subsidy loan in the amount of $450,000 for 109 South William Street apartments in Newburgh. Leora's going to do this one. Hey, good morning. Haven't you been patient today?
Almost good afternoon.
Waited till lunchtime to present this one to us.
Yeah, worked up an appetite.
But we like Newburgh, so let's do it.
Make this one quick. I think this is, as you mentioned, Ken, we're requesting a board authorization for the use of $450,000 of subsidy dollars associated with the small building loan program. Just a quick background, this is significant for the agency because it's the first project that is using small building loan program fund. That is a program that's part of our housing plan to provide funding for rehabilitation and renovation of small buildings, 5 to 40 units outside of New York City, generally in medium density neighborhoods, and obviously to support economic revitalization and eliminate blight in those areas. The funding for this program will always be combined with private financing and owner equity, and then our subsidy. As just a note, these are obviously not tax credit deals, these are not bond deals, these are private debt, and then we come in to close the gap with our financing. So that's a little bit why it's significant. And on the program side, for the project specifically, it is very significant for the city of Newburgh. This is a factory warehouse that has been vacant for 20 years. It is currently owned by the city of Newburgh. They have issued an RFP. The developer, A.O. Baxter, was selected to redevelop the site. It meets the city's goals associated with their river opportunity agenda, which is to redevelop downtown and stimulate the housing market. Newburgh has obviously some economic issues. The factory will be converted to 9 units of housing, and on the ground floor space there will be a co-working space occupied by an organization called Beehive. They've had a co-working space in Beacon since 2009, and a coffee shop that will be that will be owned and operated by the developer. The development team is A.L. Baxter Holdings. They are a local business in the Hudson Valley that owns commercial and residential real estate. And our partners on this transaction are obviously developers providing equity, as well as CPCs providing the construction loan, and eventually you have already, or we'll see already, SONYMA will provide mortgage insurance on this fund, on this project long term.
Great. Nice project.
Yep.
Important for Newburgh. And I've said this before, but a reminder that for Gloria, you and your colleagues, that it's, we just saw like 4 projects ago something huge and complicated, with the 3 RAD projects under NYCHA. Tremendous amount of work goes into that. But this is a reminder that this is a small project. A tremendous amount of work goes into this as well, right? And that needs to be recognized. And it certainly will be appreciated by the people of Newburgh and downtown Newburgh and the mayor and the authorities there, because it's a really nice project. But I just want to make sure directors, we all recognize that the size of the project is almost inversely proportional to the amount of work and effort that goes behind it, I'm sure. So thank you. Questions, comments?
Now before the board is a resolution of the City of New York Mortgage Agency authorizing the making of a subsidy loan for the project known as 109 South William Street Apartments. Assuming the first and second previously entered for the HFA board, all in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
The motion is carried and the resolution adopted.
We have an AHC consent item, item 21, a resolution authorizing the awarding of grant funds for certain projects located outside the city of New York.
Then now before the board, now before the AHC board is a
Right.
resolution of the State of New York Affordable Housing Corporation authorizing awards for grant funds for certain projects located outside the city of New York. Assuming the first and second previously entered for AHC, all in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
The motion is carried and the resolution adopted.
There being no further items for the HFA Finance and Program Committee, nor the HFA and AHC boards, I'll ask please for motions and seconds to adjourn this morning's meetings.
Assuming the first and second previously entered for the HFA Finance and Program Committee, all in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
The motion is carried. The committee meeting is adjourned. Assuming the first and second entered for HFA and AHC boards, all in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
The motions are carried. The meeting is adjourned. Our next meeting is scheduled, and this is true for Sunny May too, is for Thursday, May 9th at 9 a.m. Thank you.
Thank you, everybody.
Mark
Just
your
before
calendars.
noon, 11:57.
All right. Thanks, everybody.